It was a night that looked like every other, cold, quiet, and cruelly ordinary. The streetlights flickered weakly through the rain as Ethan Miller, a tired single father, carried his sleeping 6-year-old son from his old pickup truck to their tiny rented home at the edge of town. The wind bit at his face, and the world seemed to whisper one thing to him again and again: "You're barely holding on." He worked long hours at a construction site during the day and washed dishes at a small diner at night, trying to scrape together enough money to give his son, Noah, a life better than his own broken one. But that night, November 22nd, fate had other plans. Because that was the night he found her. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of doing good even when no one is watching, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to channel name. Stories like this remind us that sometimes, even the smallest act of compassion can change lives forever. The rain was falling harder now. Ethan was about to close his front door when he noticed a small figure across the street, standing near the lamppost. It was a girl, no older than 10, shivering under the downpour. Her pink jacket was soaked through, her shoes muddy, and she clutched a small stuffed bunny tightly to her chest. Ethan froze for a second, thinking maybe she was waiting for someone. But minutes passed. No car came. No one called for her. His heart tightened. She looked terrified and lost. Against every tired instinct that told him to stay inside, Ethan grabbed his umbrella and stepped back out into the storm. When he approached her, she didn't speak. She just looked up with wide, watery eyes, the kind a child gets when the world suddenly turns unfamiliar. "Hey there," he said softly, his voice barely above the rain. "Are you lost?" She nodded. That single gesture hit him like a punch. He asked her where her parents were, but she only whispered, "I don't know. I fell asleep in the car, and when I woke up, my daddy was gone." Ethan's chest ached. She couldn't have been lying. The fear in her eyes was too real, too raw. He wanted to call the police immediately, but one look at her trembling body changed his mind. She needed warmth, food, safety now. So he took her inside. His house wasn't much. The paint was peeling, and the heater made a low rattling sound whenever it ran. But he laid a blanket over the girl, made her a bowl of soup from what little he had left, and set her near the old fireplace. His son, Noah, peeked from his small bedroom, curious and sleepy-eyed. "Who's that, Daddy?" he asked. Ethan smiled faintly. "She's just a friend who needs a place to stay tonight." That night, Ethan watched her eat slowly, cautiously, as if afraid the food might be taken away. She finally said her name, Lily. Her voice was soft but polite. She told him she and her father had been traveling to visit family. She'd fallen asleep in the back seat, and when she woke up, the car was gone. She had no idea where she was. Ethan tried to hide his worry. Maybe the father had gone looking for her and got lost too. But deep inside, something darker whispered, what if she'd been abandoned? He didn't sleep that night. He kept checking the window, half expecting someone to knock, half fearing no one would. The rain stopped by morning, but the uncertainty stayed. The next day, Ethan called the local authorities to report a missing child. They promised to look into it but warned it might take time. "There's a chance the father's already looking for her," the officer said. "Just keep her safe until we contact you." So that's what he did. He kept her safe. For 2 days, Lily stayed with Ethan and Noah. And in that short time, something inside their small home began to change. Noah, usually quiet and lonely, laughed again. The two children built pillow forts, colored on scraps of cardboard, and watched old cartoons on Ethan's battered TV. Lily smiled more each hour she spent with them. Ethan noticed how she'd flinch at sudden noises, how she avoided talking about her family. He didn't pry. He just listened when she spoke. Every night, when the kids were asleep, Ethan sat by the fireplace thinking about his own life. He'd lost his wife in a car accident years ago, and since then, the world had felt like a long uphill climb. He had almost forgotten what it felt like to have warmth in his home that wasn't just from the fire. Lily's laughter brought it back, that fragile sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. By the third day, a police officer finally called back. "We've got something," he said. A missing child report matching her description was filed by a man named Thomas Davenport. Lives in the city. very anxious to find her. Ethan's breath caught. Davenport? That name sounded familiar. Then he remembered Thomas Davenport was one of the richest businessmen in the state, a man he'd only ever seen on billboards and TV interviews. When Ethan told Lily, she jumped up, her eyes wide with tears. "That's my daddy," she cried. Relief washed through the room like sunlight after a storm. Later that afternoon, Ethan received a call from a man's assistant, saying Mr. Davenport would be arriving soon by helicopter, yes, a helicopter, to personally retrieve his daughter. Ethan stood by his front door in disbelief. He looked around at his old couch, his cracked floor, his patched-up curtains. He worried what a man like that would think of him, of this place. When the sound of the helicopter finally echoed across the fields, Lily ran to the window, waving frantically. A tall man stepped out, his face drawn and pale, his designer coat fluttering in the wind. The moment he saw his daughter, he dropped to his knees, tears in his eyes. "Lily," he called out, voice breaking. She ran into his arms, sobbing. Ethan stood quietly by the door, watching the reunion through blurry eyes. It was beautiful, painful, and deeply human. Mr. Davenport held her for a long time before turning toward Ethan. Their eyes met, one man rich beyond imagination, the other struggling just to make it through the month. For a second, neither spoke. Then Davenport walked up to him and said, his voice low and sincere, "I don't know who you are, but thank you. You saved my world." Ethan shook his head. "I just did what anyone would do." But Davenport smiled sadly. "No, not anyone would." Before leaving, the millionaire insisted on giving Ethan money as thanks. Ethan refused. "I didn't do it for that," he said quietly. "She's a kid. She needed help." Davenport didn't argue, he just nodded, deeply moved. Then he handed Ethan his business card. "If you ever need anything," he said, "anything at all, call me." Days passed. Life returned to its usual rhythm. The construction job. The diner. The same worn-out truck and cracked boots. But something in Ethan's heart had shifted, he'd done something good, and that mattered more than any paycheck. Then, 1 week later, a black car stopped in front of his small house. A well-dressed man stepped out and handed him an envelope. Inside was a letter from Thomas Davenport himself. It read, "Ethan, you may think what you did was small, but to me and my daughter, it was everything. I owe you more than I can say. Please don't refuse this, it's not charity, it's gratitude." Attached was a deed to a new home, a fully paid house closer to the city, with space for Noah to play, a working heater, and enough stability for a fresh start. Ethan stared at the paper, shaking. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of his struggle lift, not because of money, but because someone finally saw him. When they moved into the new home, Noah laughed as he ran through the halls, his voice echoing against the walls. Ethan stood at the doorway, tears in his eyes. Sometimes life doesn't reward us immediately, he thought. Sometimes it takes a single act of kindness to turn everything around. Months later, Lily and her father visited them often. The two children became inseparable friends, and Davenport made sure Ethan had steady work at one of his construction firms, not out of pity, but because he saw the kind of man Ethan was. Honest. Selfless. The kind the world desperately needed more of. Ethan's life had changed forever because one rainy night, he chose compassion over convenience. He gave without expecting anything in return, and the universe gave back in ways he could never have imagined. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to channel name. Leave a comment about the last time someone showed you kindness or when you showed it to someone else. Your stories matter. They remind the world that love and goodness still exist. Special request. Speech balloon, comment below what you would have done if you found a lost child on a rainy night like Ethan did. Your words might inspire someone to choose kindness today. Red heart.